I was fired in the hallway. No chair. No office door closed. No witnesses except a maintenance cart and a burned-out exit sign. My supervisor stood there with a man from HR and a thin envelope. He didn't blink. "Sign it," he said. "For what?" "Removal of copper, industrial wire, and contactors from city property. Violation of policy." "What copper?" "Don't make this hard." The HR man kept his eyes on the floor. I read the letter. Termination for cause. 2 lines of justification. A date. Place for my signature. "I want inventory records," I said. "They exist." "Show me." "Not today." "Then I'm not signing." The HR man shifted. The supervisor pushed the envelope closer. I didn't touch it. He pulled a small badge scanner from his pocket. "Your card," he said. I handed it over. He disabled it and dropped it into the envelope with the same care he used for safety glasses and lunch receipts. Then he pointed to the door and said I had 5 minutes to leave the property. I walked past the boiler room and the stack of old air handlers that always rattled near the duct seams. I passed the inspection board with the neat check marks. I passed the vending machine with the flickering light. A guy I trained last year avoided my eyes and stepped aside with his mop. Outside, the morning had turned bright and flat. A couple of city trucks idled by the fence. The chain link hummed with the traffic from the road. I stared at my hands. They were clean. No copper dust. No insulation crumbs. No proof I hadn't done what I hadn't done. I stood there until a security guard coughed behind me. "Sir," he said, "I'm going." I drove home on the same route I drove every day. Past the diner where I'd gotten coffee. Past a small auto shop that always had a pickup on the lift. Past a school zone where a crossing guard knew my truck and lifted 2 fingers in a quick salute. I didn't wave back. My hands were heavy on the wheel. At my apartment, I put the envelope on the kitchen table. I poured water into the coffee maker. I pressed the button. Then I sat and listened to the machine click. The drip came slow. The smell didn't help. I called my sister and told her. She paused and said, "Do you need money?" "I need records," I said. "You sure you want to fight it?" "I didn't take anything." She didn't speak for a while. Then she said she could bring dinner later. I said I'd be fine. I wasn't hungry. I took the envelope apart. There was the letter. There was the form for final pay. There was a small badge sleeve with my disabled card. My name was printed wrong on the sleeve. 2 letters swapped. It irritated me more than I expected. I set it all aside and pulled out a legal pad. I wrote 1 line at the top. I didn't take anything. Then I wrote what I knew. I'd been a maintenance technician at the municipal water treatment plant. Not the big one that made the news. The smaller one upriver that most people forgot about unless their bill looked strange. I handled motors, pumps, switchgear, heaters, and whatever else broke or refused to start. I worked on call some nights. I trained 2 guys. I didn't chat much. I liked the quiet rooms and the predictable noises. Bearings. Flow. The clunk when a relay settled. You learn those sounds. The plant had a parts cage. It had racks with conduit, boxes of wire, bins of contactors, coils, and fuses. The manager liked spreadsheets. He liked scanners. He liked signing his name with a perfect square dot for the I. He liked rules that looked good on a slide. 3 weeks earlier, he had switched us to a new system for tracking parts. The old sheets were gone. We used a handheld scanner tied to a tablet. The tablet didn't like the Wi-Fi in the power building. We walked to the corridor to sync each time. He called it real-time visibility. The accusation said I had scanned out wire and contactors on days I was assigned to another building. It said I had no matching work orders. It said the value was above the threshold that triggers automatic review. It said I had refused to explain. That last one wasn't true. No one had asked me anything before the hallway. I drew a 2-column table on the pad. On the left I wrote what they claimed. On the right I wrote where I was. I didn't need exact times. I needed anchors. Morning. Before lunch. After lunch. End of day. I added job order numbers from memory. Not all of them, but enough to get started. I wrote West Pump Seal after lunch. I wrote Grit room breaker trip morning. I wrote chlorine building door jam. End of day. I opened a drawer and pulled out a shoebox filled with old work gloves, receipts, and folded printouts I kept for reasons like this. I looked for two things. My own notes and copies of service reports I'd slipped into my box after turning in originals. I didn't like losing paper to binders I never saw again. In the stack I found a work order from 2 weeks back with my handwriting on the bottom. Re-terminate motor leads M2. Use flexible conduit. Replace 2 lugs. Checked rotation. On the margin I had written a number that wouldn't mean anything to most people. It was a serial from a contactor coil. I wrote those when I had to. It reminded me later what I had touched. I found a printed routing sheet with my initials next to a morning task. Meter pit checks. Not glamorous. No contactors involved. I found a folded map of the site with red circles where we had underground junction boxes. I had circled them on a rainy week when we were chasing a ground fault. I placed everything in 3 piles. Things with dates, things with numbers, things with my handwriting. Then I made a list of what I knew I could get. Badge access logs. My card would show entrances and exits to each building. That wasn't opinion. That was recorded. If the accusation said I pulled items from the parts cage at times my card never touched that door, that would speak. Work order assignments. The plant used a system for tickets. It stamped when a job was assigned and when it was closed. I didn't have access now, but copies existed in email notifications. I kept some without trying. I checked my inbox. Subject line stacked up. W013827 assigned. W013842 closed. Dates and times. CCTV footage. The parts cage had a camera. The door had one too. The footage looped every few weeks unless someone flagged it. If I moved fast, the weeks they claimed might still be on a hard drive in the security office. I knew the security supervisor. He took early breaks. He didn't like the plant manager. He liked rules that fit the day, not a slide. Vendor delivery slips. Contactors didn't appear out of nowhere. Someone signed when they arrived. The signatures lived in a binder near receiving. The receiving clerk was a quiet woman who kept a small plant on her desk and a better memory than anyone I knew there. Finally, the scanner data. Each scan was tied to a device ID and a user login. The handhelds kept an internal log even when the Wi-Fi failed. You could dump it with a USB cable. Most people didn't know that. I did because I was the guy who got asked to fix chargers and replace crack screens. I wasn't the IT guy. I was the can you just guy. The scanner that lived near the parts cage had a corner chipped off and a fixed piece of tape by the battery. I put the tape there. I took a breath and decided what to do first. I drove back to the plant. I parked on the street. I didn't have a badge, but the security desk sat behind a glass window near the main door. The supervisor on shift was an older man with a neat haircut. He worked nights sometimes. He had a way of watching people's shoes when they lied. He looked up when I walked in. "You're not supposed to be here," he said. "I need to talk to you," I said. "About what?" "Cameras and doors. Last 3 weeks." He didn't move. He waited. "I got fired," I said. He nodded once. He didn't look surprised. "I want the door logs and camera for the parts cage for the days they say I took stuff." "You have a request from management." "I have an accusation from management." He rubbed his chin. Then he shook his head. "I can't give you footage," he said. "I can tell you if it exists and for how long. I can confirm times on badge hits if you have dates. That much I can do without getting yelled at." He liked the plant manager about as much as a locked emergency exit. He didn't want to get dragged into a story, but he didn't mind the truth showing up by accident. I slid a folded sheet through the slot. I had written 3 days they mentioned in the letter. Morning, afternoon, evening ranges. He looked. He typed. He looked again. "The camera had a disk swap 2 weeks ago," he said. "Footage is there for those days. Door hits show you in the chlorine building most of that morning you asked. Not in the power building. Parts cage camera covers the aisle and door. If you'd walked in with a spool of wire, I'd see it. Can you flag the video so it doesn't get overwritten?" He tapped a key. Done, he said. It will need a written request to release. Whose? HR, he said. I thanked him and stepped back into the hallway. A young guard looked up from his phone. I kept walking. In receiving, the clerk looked up at me and frowned. They let you go, she said. They did. I'm sorry. Did we get a delivery of motor starters the week before last? She pursed her lips and turned to the binder. Every week, it feels like, she said. Here, Wednesday, for boxes. Signed out by, not you. She put her finger on a signature. It belonged to the plant manager. Clean. Square dot for the I. Can I take a picture of the log page? I asked. I shouldn't. She closed the binder, then opened it again and turned it 90 degrees. If someone were to forget to put this away before going to lunch, she said, it would still be here after. She stood. I should go to lunch, she said. Thank you, I said. I didn't do anything, she said. She walked away. I took 2 quick photos and closed the binder. The plant on her desk needed water. I touched the soil. Dry. The parts cage sat in a corner of the power building. The scanner with the tape on the battery rested in its cradle. A tech I'd trained, Luis, stood there with an order sheet. You heard, he said. I heard. He looked at the floor. It's not right, he said. I need the scanner, I said. For a minute. He glanced at the camera dome and shrugged. Battery's loose. Knock yourself out. I lifted the scanner, popped the back, and slipped the battery partially out. The tape was still in place. I pressed 2 buttons and brought up the maintenance menu. The logs were there. I plugged a small USB cable into the side. The scanner didn't care whose laptop you used. It just exported a text file with timestamps, item codes, and user IDs. Copied it. The world didn't tilt. No alarm sounded. I put everything back exactly the way it had been. On the way out, I stopped in a hallway and opened the file on my phone. The device ID was visible. The user ID for those days wasn't mine. It was a generic admin login the plant manager used when he helped. The pulls of wire and contactors happened on a day my badge never hit the parts cage door. I checked the times. They lined up with a safety meeting I'd attended in another building. I had signed the sheet. My name was there with all the others. When I reached the parking lot, I saw the HR man standing near the door. He looked at me and raised a hand. I walked over. You can't be here, he said. He didn't sound convinced. I needed my toolbox, I said. Toolboxes stay until cleared. I'll leave, but I need to request something. He waited. I want a copy of the badge access logs for my card for the last month. I want the door hits for the parts cage for the 3 days you mentioned in my termination letter. I want the CCTV clips covering those door hits for the same days. I want the scanner logs for the device used. I'll put that in writing. You'll need to send it to legal, he said. Give me the email address. He gave me a card. I typed the address into a new message in front of him. I wrote the request in plain lines. I CC'd myself. I sent it. He cleared his throat. They won't like this, he said. They can like the other option less. I said. What other option? The city's ethics hotline. The state auditor. The bonding company for the plant's maintenance contract. The insurance carrier. The prime contractor's compliance officer. Pick one. He swallowed. He wasn't a bad man. He was furniture in the room where bad decisions got made. I'll forward your email, he said. At home. I opened a new folder on my laptop. I named it Plant. Not clever. Easy to find. I put the badge request email there. I added the scanner log I had copied. I added the photos of the receiving binder. I added 2 work orders with my handwriting and the coil serial number on the margin. I added a PDF of the safety meeting sheet I had scanned last month because I get itchy when paper disappears. Then I made another list, who to send what and in what order. The city had an internal hotline for misuse of public resources. Took anonymous tips. It asked for dates, names, documents. The state auditor had a website form. The maintenance contract listed a bonding company and the name of a compliance officer for the prime contractor who provided site management. These people didn't care about office politics. They cared about invoices, signatures, and whether a manager was moving parts off books to meet some quota or fix a budget hole. I didn't know the motive. I didn't need it. I needed the mismatch between the story and the records. Before I filled anything out, I wanted one more piece. I drove to the electrical vendor where we bought most of our parts. Not the big box store. The counter place where the same three guys remembered faces and haircuts. The man behind the counter looked up and smiled like he always did. "You still at the plant?" he asked. "Was," I said. He frowned. "Sorry to hear that. How can I help?" "I need sales history for the plant for the last month. Specifically contactors and THHN copper spools. If I give you our account number and a purchase order range, can you print me a customer copy?" He looked left and right, then lowered his voice. "Officially, no. Unofficially, if you pay cash for a small order right now and give me the date range, I can slide a print to you when nobody's looking. It'll be the same paper we put in every box." I ordered 2 rolls of tape and a pack of wire ties. I paid cash. He printed a list when the other 2 were busy lifting a transformer for a customer. The list showed dates and quantities. It showed a delivery date that matched the receiving binder photo. It showed a note, "Picked up at counter by PM. Plant manager." "Appreciate it," I said. "I didn't do anything," he said. On the way out, my phone buzzed. It was an email from HR. "We have received your request," it said. "We will review and respond. No timeline. No apology." I went home and wrote 2 reports. The first was to the city hotline. Kept it clean. I listed the dates in question. I listed the mismatch between my badge logs, requested, and the scanner exports, copied. I listed the receiving binder entries showing the manager's signature for the contactors. I listed the safety meeting time block when I was in another building. I requested that the cameras be preserved. I attached the documents I had. The second went to the bonding company and the prime contractor's compliance officer. I included the same details. I added that internal controls appeared to be overridden by a manager using a generic admin login to remove parts without a corresponding work order, potentially to hide non-contract work or to shift costs. I said I had been terminated for cause based on those entries. I didn't ask for my job back. I asked for an independent audit of parts inventory and door access for the period. I attached everything. I hit send on both. Then I waited. Waiting is action too. It's what you do when the ball is rolling and you don't want to knock it off course. The next day, just before lunch, my phone rang. "Unknown number," it said. I let it go to voicemail. A man's voice left a message. He said he was with the city auditor's office. He asked me to call back. I did. He asked for dates. He asked who could confirm the existence of the camera footage. I gave him the security supervisor's name. He asked if I had the scanner log. I said yes. I told him how I got it. He didn't scold me. He said he would request it formally. "Do you want your job back?" he asked. "I want my name back," I said. He grunted. "Fair." In the afternoon, an email arrived from the prime contractor's compliance office. Short. "We are initiating a review," it said. "Please preserve any documents you have. We will request copies." It was signed by a woman whose title included Director and Risk. By evening, I had an email from HR. "Your request is being processed," it said. "We estimate we can provide a response in a week." There was no apology. There was no standard of care. There was a delay. I replied and CC'd the auditor and the compliance officer. I wrote one sentence. "The camera system overwrites on a short cycle." I added the date when the footage would likely disappear if not flagged. The security supervisor had told me. I kept my email short. I wanted them to feel the clock. The next morning, the security supervisor called. "Someone asked me to pull the footage," he said. "Legal." I flagged it. They didn't look pleased. "Thank you," I said. "Don't thank me," he said. "Thank the policy that says we keep everything for 30 days unless told otherwise." Today was 29. The same morning, my sister left a casserole on my counter with a note. "Eat," it said. I warmed a plate. I tasted nothing, but I ate. 2 days passed. Then the HR man called. He sounded tired. "You're being placed on administrative leave with pay," he said. "I'm not employed," I said. "Pending review," he said. He read from a script. It felt like he had been told to call and not allowed to say why. "Will you be sending the logs?" I asked. "We are working with internal and external parties to assemble relevant materials," he said. He hung up. That night I slept. Not well, but deeper than before. In the morning I made coffee and it tasted like something again. A week later, the compliance officer called me. Her voice was crisp. She didn't waste words. "We completed a limited scope review," she said. "We found that inventory withdrawals were made with a generic login not assigned to you. We found no door access records for you at the parts cage for the time cited. We found video that shows another individual at the cage during those pulls. Do you need a statement?" I asked. "We need to discuss your employment record," she said. "HR will reach out with a proposal." "What kind of proposal?" "Settlement and correction of personnel file. Back pay for the period since your termination. A neutral reference letter. Expungement of for cause notation. We will also be initiating corrective action with management." Does corrective action have a name? "It means the manager in question will no longer be in a position to approve inventory transactions," she said. "It means a review of other periods. It may mean more." "Is he fired?" I asked. "I cannot say," she said. The way she said it told me enough. The plant manager liked slides. He would get a very final one in a room with fewer chairs. HR called later that day. They sounded like a dentist reading a weather report. The package they offered was simple. Back pay, benefits restored for the gap, a letter of correction in my file, and an NDA that said I could describe my experience but not disclose the details of the audit. I read it carefully. I sent it to a friend who was a paralegal. He marked 2 lines and sent it back. I asked HR to change the lines. They did. "Do you want to return to your position?" the HR man asked. "No," I said. "May we ask why?" "I don't trust the room," I said. Silence for a breath. "Understood," he said. "Send me my tools," I said. "And the letter." A courier dropped off 2 boxes the next day. My wrench set was still oily. Someone had wrapped my meter in bubble wrap like it might break. My name was on a small label on the handle. Spelled right. I didn't celebrate. That's not what this was. I took the letter out of its plastic sleeve and read it over the sink. It said the termination had been rescinded. It said the cause notation had been removed. It said the separation was now mutual. It said HR would provide a neutral reference that included my duties and dates. It said nothing about the manager. Good letters say only what they have to. I put the letter in a folder with the rest and slid it into my file cabinet. The drawer shut with a soft thud. In the days that followed, a couple of people from the plant called me at odd times. Not to gossip. They wanted to know if I was okay. One of them was Luis. "They moved him," he said. He didn't say the manager's name. "Where?" "Don't know. Not here. We have to sign out parts with our own logins now. New rule." "It's an old rule," I said. "Yeah," he said. He didn't laugh. "You going to sue?" "No. You could. I know. You're a better man than me." "That's not why," I said. "I don't want to spend a year in rooms with carpets and clocks." He didn't answer. A week later, the city auditor called to close the loop. He spoke as if we were 2 men at a bus stop. No rush, no smiles. "Thank you for your cooperation," he said. "The matter is resolved on our end." "Resolved how?" "You were not responsible for the withdrawals," he said. "The agency has taken administrative action. That's all I can tell you." "That's enough," I said. After the call stopped, the silence felt different. It wasn't the heaviness of being erased. It was the normal quiet of a small place when the day hasn't started yet. I cleaned my tools and put them in a new order. I wiped the meter leads. I tightened the latch on my toolbox. I put it by the door. I looked for work, not at a plant. I wanted job sites where one person's name didn't override a camera and a door sensor. I met a contractor who handled schools and small offices. He needed someone who could find a ground fault fast and didn't mind crawling, bending, and listening. We talked near a loading dock. He asked what happened at my last job. I told him that I fixed things, got blamed for something I didn't do, and proved it with paper. He nodded like I had said I knew how to read a ladder diagram. He called me 2 days later. On my first morning, I parked behind a small office building and walked past a dumpster. The air felt like metal and cut grass. The janitor propped a door for me with a rubber wedge. He didn't ask for a badge. He pointed me to the electrical room and went back to his cart. The work was straightforward. A breaker that tripped not because it was faulty but because someone had overloaded a circuit with space heaters under desks. The fix wasn't a bigger breaker. It was a conversation, new outlets on a dedicated run, and labeling that made sense. Labeling is where half the fights come from. People hate not knowing what a switch does. At lunch, I sat on the tailgate of my truck and ate a sandwich. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister. "How's the new place?" She wrote. "Quiet." I wrote back. She sent a thumbs up. Some nights I thought about the plant. Not in a bitter way. In the way you think about a house you moved out of after you found mold behind the drywall. The pipes still carry water. Someone else turns the valves. The rooms echo differently without you. The truth didn't fix everything, but it fixed the part that had my name on it. That was the job. People like to say they want justice. What I wanted was something smaller and heavier. A line in a folder that matched the day it described. A door log that wasn't a weapon. A video that didn't lie because it couldn't. My sister asked me once if I ever wished I had made a scene when they fired me. I shook my head. Scenes are for people who want to feel right. I said. I wanted to be right. The last part of the story is plain. It doesn't end with a speech. It ends with a habit. Most mornings, before I leave, I check the thermostat near the kitchen. I nudge it a degree up or down depending on the season. There's a small click when the relay closes. It's a sound I've known since I was a kid, standing in a basement, listening to a furnace wake up and thinking it sounded like a promise being kept. I hear that click and I pick up my toolbox and I go,